And speaking of keeping on winning, I tell you, have you seen some of the stuff that's gotten reported recently out of Italy? Just at the end of the week last week, the Italian Prime Minister, Giuseppe Conte, has called for the resignations of 6 top Italian intelligence officials. Now, why in the world would that be, Pat George?
I don't know. That's
you remember the name Joseph Mifsud that we've talked about, the Maltese professor who was in Rome?
It has to do with what kind of support they're giving the United States.
Yeah. Well, remember where we talked about there were these intelligence operations run against, well, a number of people, but one in particular was George Papadopoulos. Mm-hmm. And by the way, folks, you got to get his book. His book is fascinating. I'm not quite through with it yet, but I'm in the process of reading it. But it's like a first-person narrative of what happened to him. And you talk about a guy who just kind of got led to the slaughter by people, but he's actually very sharp. I mean, he figured out what they were doing, and he did not fall for it. Like when they took him to Cyprus and gave him $10,000 in cash. Thank God.
I'm glad you're delving into this story because it's very confusing to follow. If you just look at the headlines, it's not going to give you what you need to know. And it explains our relations with Italy, which is important.
Right. Well, I think the main thing you need to know is that it's an open secret among the Italian people in Rome, and of course other people are talking about it, that the reason that these resignations were called for by the prime minister is because these folks greenlighted the operation against Papadopoulos. They greenlighted the ongoing American intelligence operation, and remember, while it was ostensibly against Papadopoulos, it was really against then-candidate Donald Trump, right? That was really what they were doing, was invading his campaign and placing, well, if we can't call them spies, what do we call them? Surveillance people throughout the campaign. You know, we're talking about Stefan Halper, Joseph Mifsud, and others, and there were a whole bevy of other people. And there's a lot of detail here, but what does this tell you? This tells you that the conspiracy of secrecy to keep this under wraps, exactly how this went down, is all unraveling. We're now going to have the information. Look, if there were 6 high-level intelligence officials in Rome, and we know they were involved, then we also know who they were involved with on the American side, right? I mean, this information, they wouldn't be operating in a vacuum. So they're going to be saying, well, we were asked to do this operation by the U.S. CIA director, John Brennan.
This could be bad timing for the Democrats.
Oh, this could be really bad timing for the Democrats. Let's hope so, right? Let's hope this is how things are all unraveling. So keep watching what's going on in Italy. It does play into the whole picture. We don't have time to do the whole picture justice today. One thing that I wanted to point out for you. Okay, we're down to about a minute
before you start hearing some music.
Because I had Representative Ratcliffe. I don't think we've run his thing yet where he said that the FISA applications on the front of it, remember, he's seen them in big bold letters. They say verified application, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Well, and this is the verified application, which included mostly the Steele dossier, which had all this salacious and unverified material. To hear James Comey tell the president about it in January of 2017, everything was salacious and unverified. But back in October of 2016, when they put the FISA in on Carter Page, or maybe September of 2016, but regardless, September, October 2016, they put the FISA app in, and it said verified application, as though they'd actually checked out the facts and were verifying them to the court, which they obviously did not do. That's a false filing. No wonder the FISA court rubber stamps everything, because they assume that the FBI did its job and actually verified this before applying for a warrant. But in reality, they didn't. Now, the reason we say the FISA app against Carter Page is because we think there's probably also one out there against George Papadopoulos, potentially. And if there's not, I mean, even more serious, because then they spied on an American citizen, then they surveilled an American citizen without a warrant in violation of the Fourth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. And it seems like that's what they did. Now, one last point. Who's requested a withdrawal of these demands over in Italy? The socialists, also known as the communists. And how many of our top intelligence officials, while this was running, were ex-communists? We know at least 2 out of 3. Comey's admitted it, that he was a communist. And Brennan has admitted that he actually voted for communists for president, Gus Hall for president in 1976. I mean, can you believe it? Our top intelligence officials are communists?
Thank you for listening to the Morgan Streetman Show. We hope you enjoyed what you heard, and if you did, please click like and subscribe to help us out. And remember that we recommend that you exercise your brain at least once a week.